I'm Mike Sherman. He's OSU beat writer Scott Wright, and this is the Bedlam Nation Conversation from the Opubco Studios at Britton and Broadway in Oklahoma City. We're talking OU and OSU sports, and Scott, the subject is basketball for starters. OU and OSU, their fans spent better part of a couple days at the end of their seasons holding their breath, hoping that both schools wouldn't have to go through a coaching search. Turns out that they didn't. But is it ever safe to exhale, especially in the case of OSU? First question for you. OSU now looks like Travis Ford is going to be there for a while, or is he?
Well, you certainly think that you've got to think that Kentucky is the premier job in his mind, and when it goes to somebody else, somebody that's a proven coach and has already in Calipari, you've got a guy who's already tested the NBA and come back and probably knows that this is where he's supposed to be, that being college basketball. You assume he's probably going to be there for a while. So we'll see how that impacts Travis Ford's mental approach whenever other jobs start coming open on down the road. But you would think that that's still probably the premier job in his mind, and he's already proven that he can recruit in Stillwater. So you would think that maybe he finds a way to make this a home for a while and eventually catapult himself to that Kentucky job when Calipari calls it quits.
In some ways, what a great thing for OSU that the Kentucky job came open so soon. You know, Ford had only been there for a year, and also, so here it comes open. They bring in Calipari, who is one of, in some ways, one of the maybe top 4 or 5 coaches in college basketball. A guy who looks like he might stay at Kentucky for a long time. A guy who looks like he has the pedigree that Kentucky looked for his job, and there he is set, meaning OSU, they have their coach. What does that mean? That brings stability to a program that really has been through an unstable time in its history.
Yeah, it really does, and the fact that the Kentucky job did come open early, I think it was a big key to this, because if we were 3 or 4 years down the road and Travis Ford had built Oklahoma State back up to a team that's going to Sweet 16s and Final Fours like they were with Eddie Sutton, I think that he becomes a lot more attractive than even a John Calipari, because he's a Kentucky guy. There was a big group of fans, and you would assume probably some boosters involved who really wanted Travis Ford. That he was the top of their list, but ultimately there were a couple other guys ahead of him on the list, John Calipari being one of those.
How far down the list? You were told you didn't know whose names were on those lists ahead of him, but you knew where he ranked. Where was he?
Right. I'd been told that he was either number 4 or number 5 on the list. 2 of the guys that were definitely ahead of him, though, were Billy Donovan at Florida and John Calipari. So it looks like they kind of knew that they had a chance at Travis Ford if they got that far. But they had a couple of guys ahead of him, and Calipari was one of them.
Okay, we're staying on basketball. You covered both programs, Scott. Let's talk about OU. We now see where Jeff Capel says he's agreed to a new contract with OU. What's the likelihood that he's a long-timer there in your mind?
Well, I think that he's another guy that's going to be hanging around for a while now because of what he's done at Oklahoma. Blake Griffin obviously helped getting them to an Elite Eight, but he brought in Willie Warren. He's got Keith Gallen and Tommy Mason Griffin and other guys in this next recruiting class that are going to keep. He's showing that he can kind of keep filling the bench with some really big time talent, and I think that he's going to be able to continue that. He's at a place right now where his expectations are as high as anybody's. Obviously being a football school, basketball can kind of slip through the cracks. That's a good thing and a bad thing. Could it ultimately be the thing that makes him want to go somewhere else because he has had a problem with fan support and things like that in his first couple of years at OU. So, but we'll see how it goes. But I think that he's found that he can recruit to Oklahoma. He can have major success at Oklahoma. So I think there's a chance that he could be around for a while.
If you look at talk about recruiting, you look at Oklahoma under Jeff Capel. He's recruited more McDonald All-Americans to Oklahoma than Kansas has in recent years. Has that recruitment sort of increased the possibility that he'll stay past Blake Griffin? A lot of coaches are in Jeff Capel's situation. They're not at a quote-unquote basketball school, and the best player that they've recruited leaves, number 1 pick in the draft projected as. You might want to say, hey, I need to get out of here. Doesn't sound like that at all with him. So you think his recruiting success might be the thing that binds him to the university even longer.
Yeah, I really do. You know, when he got Blake Griffin, that was a big reason that Willie Warren wanted to come to Oklahoma. When he got Willie Warren, that was a big reason that other guys started wanting to start looking at Oklahoma. Now he's had 4 McDonald's All-Americans in 3 recruiting classes, which Oklahoma never had them in back-to-back years, and Capel did that. They never had 2 in 1 year, and they did that this year. So he's obviously the recruiting success, I think, is just going to keep coming. 2 years in a row now, we've heard rumors about other programs looking at Jeff Capel. That's going to continue. When you've got a young coach who has recruiting success, basketball success, the way that he has so early in his career, that's going to happen just about every year.
And who's not from here.
Right.
I mean, that's the kind of thing that says, there's always going to be this speculation about him in the ACC and other schools.
Right.
Okay, let's talk about Blake Griffin more. Yesterday, Blake Griffin told the world what everybody had always suspected, that he was leaving the University of Oklahoma. This is a guy that's projected to be the #1 NBA pick by nearly everybody. I heard Stephen A. Smith talk about him on ESPN today, comparing him to Len Bias. Now, you covered Blake. You saw him his first year at OU. How good do you think he'll be at the next level?
I think he's got a chance to be really, really good, because the Blake Griffin that everybody saw this year, that was the National Player of the Year and that's getting talked about as the #1 pick, is a lot better than the Blake Griffin that we saw when he was a freshman, whenever I covered Oklahoma. And that commitment, that work ethic that he has, that he got from his parents, we saw that same work ethic in Taylor Griffin. That's instilled in him, and that's not going anywhere. He's going to continue to work that way when he gets to the next level. He's got an athletic skill set that we haven't really seen in one guy. He's got pieces of different people's games. People want to try to find somebody to compare him to. It's really difficult because we haven't seen a guy with his size, his athletic ability, his creativity in scoring, his ability to rebound, all packaged together. I'm not saying that he's just at a great level right now, but that skill set that he's got packaged in a really big body is pretty unique.
Okay, it's going to be exciting to see where he goes. We'll be covering that and more as the draft goes along. But right now, with basketball over, Scott, you're in the thick of spring football. You're the OSU football beat writer. Let's talk about the Cowboys in spring. Let's talk about the Cowboys secondary. One starter coming back in that area. What are they going to do for a secondary going into next season?
Well, it's a work in progress right now. A lot of young guys, even some seniors who just haven't had a lot of experience during their time at Oklahoma State. A guy like Terrence Anderson, who's really been a special teamer and gets thrown in at cornerback every now and then, made one start. He's appeared in 35 career games. But he's looking at a starting opportunity at the other cornerback spot opposite Parrish Cox. The fact that they do have Parrish Cox back is a big key. I think that Jacob Lacey was the better cornerback last year. He played on the boundary side, which is a little bit tougher position because things happen a lot quicker when you're on the short side of the field. Parrish Cox is going to stay on that wide side of the field, but he's a guy with an NFL body at cornerback. He's got NFL skills, his special teams. This is going to be a guy that has a chance to play in the league, is what I'm getting at. But Terrence Anderson's probably going to step in at that other cornerback spot. Then you're looking at some young guys like Victor Johnson, who was really impressive as a true freshman. Johnny Thomas the same way. Lucian Antoine was a guy we never really got to see what he could do because he got hurt so early. And he's a guy that's basically only played football for about 4 years in his entire life because he came over from Haiti and didn't start playing until he was a senior in high school. And so the opportunity for improvement in his game is really dramatic, I think, at this point. We'll see how those safety positions kind of how the players kind of shuffle out and who comes to the top. But it's a lot of inexperience back there, so they're going to need to kind of grow up quick. You're facing Georgia the first game of the season, but it's not too long before Texas and Missouri and Texas Tech are coming to Stillwater. You're talking about Lucian Antoine, a guy we've written about a lot, a guy that you wrote about earlier this spring. Let's talk about somebody else that's coming up that we're going to be writing about. Is Bill Young. Does Bill Young's go tackle the guy with the ball strategy, the simplification of OSU
defensive football, does that really help a guy like Lucian Anton?
It really does because of that inexperience. For a guy like him to go from junior college to get thrown into a fairly complicated system that Tim Beckman was running last year, might have slowed down the progression for him. Now, I think that right now he's being slowed down by the injury still. They're not clearing him for full contact. He's wearing a big brace on the knee. So I think once we see him where he's full go, I think that he's really going to be able to excel. You've seen other guys that are being able to do that now in a system where there's not as much thinking involved. Donald Booker, another junior college linebacker who came in last year. He's still going to be a second team guy, but he's making more plays now because he's not having to try to break down this complicated defense.
How a Bill Young defense looks will be an important and interesting storyline when OSU holds its spring game a week from Sunday. Now, another big one will be how the Cowboys handle the receiver spot opposite of Des Bryant. You wrote about Justin Blackman of Plainview. Tell us again how he's looking or what you hear about him.
He's looked really good. We had been hearing things that he was playing really well. Last week we got an opportunity to watch a practice, and he came out and made a few big catches. A really nice one-handed grab with the left hand. He looks like a guy that's got all the tools to step in and be a Des Bryant type of guy. Now, I think Des Bryant is special. I'm not going to say that this is the next Des Bryant, but Justin Blackman certainly has the athletic ability and the ball skills and the mental capacity to be a big-time receiver, I think, at Oklahoma State.
Scott, do you think that job's his?
The number 2 receiver, I think that by the end of the year it's going to be. DeMarcus Conner is a senior for one. That's gonna earn him a little bit of respect. He's a great run blocker downfield. And those are two things that are probably going to keep him on the field a lot because of the importance of the run game in Oklahoma State's offense. But when it comes time to find a number 2 receiver, I think Blackman is going to be the guy that's at the top of the list.
Okay, other than Blackman, who else are you excited to see when they get out there and play the spring game in a couple weeks?
Victor Johnson is a guy that I was really impressed with last year. He came out of redshirt after Lucian Antoine got hurt, and at that safety position, they can stand some improvement there. Quentin Moore was a solid guy as a senior last year, but wasn't really a playmaker. And if you can have a playmaker at that free safety spot, it really changes the dynamic of your defense. Dexter Pratt, assuming he's healthy again, he had to sit out a couple of practices last week with turf toe. But looking at him physically, a really impressive running back. Obviously, it's going to be a couple of years probably before we see him on the field, at least in a real significant manner. But physically very impressive looking, and before he got hurt, apparently was really showing off his footwork to the coaches too. Kai Staley is a guy that either Guthrie or Oklahoma State fans, if they haven't seen him in a while, need to get out there and see what he looks like, because he is really more defined. He was always a big, strong guy, but he's really defined and physically very imposing looking running back.
Okay, thanks, Scott. That's all for the Bedlam Nation conversation, but you can continue the debate on all things OU and OSU on the only website focused on both schools. That's bedlamnation.com.